Hey everyone. For the past couple of weeks, I have been researching Vikings, and so I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about how they lived and kind of their day-to-day life. Vikings lived from around 793 to 1066 CE. They were Norse people living in Northern Europe, so Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And they raided areas and traded goods across Northern Europe, and they went west to Greenland, Iceland, and parts of North America. When it came to clothing, Vikings wore the best that they could afford to show off their status and wealth and appeal to others. They wore clothes that were mainly made from linen and wool, and they were very colorful with lots of embroidered patterns and stitching. Some of the colors that they had were black, yellow, blue, purple, white, maroon, brown, and red. Red was the most expensive color, and it showed a lot of wealth because it had to be imported. You couldn't get it locally. Men wore typically tunics and trousers, which were made of linen or wool, and they occasionally wore cloaks or leg wrappings just to have a little bit of extra warmth in the wintertime. Women wore long ankle-length underdresses, which typically had long sleeves, and then shorter dresses with straps on top of those, and sometimes they wore scarves over their heads. So Vikings ate whatever they could farm or hunt. They lived in a climate where it was very good to grow barley and rye, so they made a lot of beer, bread, and stew. The vegetables that they farmed included cabbage, onions, garlic, turnips, peas, and beans. And they also picked a lot of local wild berries and hazelnuts. They were very good at fishing. Since they lived in Northern Europe, it was kind of along the coast, so they ate about 25% of their diet was fish. And they raised cows, horses, ducks, goats, pigs, sheep, and chickens, and they ate meat from all of those. They also used cow's milk to make butter, buttermilk, and cheese. Some of the most common tools that were found from excavated sites were actually tweezers, razors, and combs made out of animal bone. Vikings used very strong soap to wash their bodies and bleach their hair because blonde hair was considered a standard of beauty. Others have also suggested that Vikings were quote-unquote clean freaks because they bathed once a week, while other Europeans during that time would bathe maybe once or twice a year at most. And the original Scandinavian word for Saturday actually meant washing day. So during the Viking Age, child mortality was very high because kids were susceptible to diseases which didn't really have treatments at the time. And because the life expectancy overall was pretty low, children had to take on responsibilities and start doing work at a very young age. They often followed in their parents' footsteps in terms of job and craft. So the parents taught their kids whatever their family craft was. And they didn't go to school, and very few knew how to read, but wooden toys and swords have been found, and animal figures have been excavated from various sites. So Vikings were known for their water transport because they traveled all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to parts of North America. Their main ships were called longships, and they were warships that used to carry troops. They weren't built for carrying cargo, and they could carry 18 pairs of oarsmen, but only a week worth of supplies. They were about 30 meters long, and their sails made them go fast, so they were very stealthy ships. Then there were also merchant ships, which were smaller and made to carry cargo. So they had a wider and deeper hull for more storage, and they relied solely on sails. They didn't have any oars. Vikings also traveled on land using oxen to pull cargo carts and horses to carry people. In the winter, they also used sledges, skis, and skates to get around because there was a lot of snow and ice on the ground. Vikings lived in small villages with 6 or 7 farms on each village. The main building on the farm was the longhouse, which is where the family ate and slept. It was big enough for an entire family, which was grandparents, the parents and the children, and the parents' siblings and their children, and slaves and animals could live there too. They were typically made from wood and clay, and there would be a hole in the ceiling for smoke from the fire to escape, but typically it wasn't enough ventilation. so the house would be very hot and stuffy inside. Other buildings on the farm include barns and stables for animals and workshops for people to practice their craft. These are the sources I used and the links to all the images in the presentation. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something new.